You know, the Bible is filled with immorality of all kinds. It's got slavery. The Bible even approves of having multiple wives. So it can't be really the Word of God, can it? Hold on. Not so fast. Let's talk about this. Hello, I'm Methodist Dave. I'm a professional theologian and teacher of the Bible. And today we're going to talk about Genesis chapter 16, a very sordid and definitely not a very flattering account of the patriarch Abraham. Now, in a previous video, we talked about how Abraham went down into Egypt and passed his wife off as his sister, which she was his half-sister. But he didn't want to get murdered so that someone would take her away from him. So he says, tell everybody you're my sister, and Pharaoh takes Sarah into the harem and doesn't have her for his wife, but came close to that. And then he finds out. But we also read that because he was so pleased with Sarah and he wanted to show his gratitude, that Pharaoh gave Abraham a lot of livestock and servants. Well, now that's going to come back and bite him in the butt. Well, Abraham still has not had an heir. And God has promised to make a great nation out of Abraham. And nothing's happening. So Sarah concocts an idea. Now, the idea that she's coming up is cultural. This is not something that is prescribed by the Old Testament law. This is something that describes an event. And what Sarah does is she takes one of her handmaidens, a maid, servant, an Egyptian woman named Hagar. Where did the Egyptian woman come from? These are one of the servants that Pharaoh gave to Abraham when he was down in Egypt. Obviously, she's probably pretty young, very attractive. And Sarah says to Abraham, God doesn't want me to have a child. Perhaps I can have a child through Hagar. And this is a custom that you could take a surrogate. And then this surrogate would become pregnant by your husband. And the child that she gave, because she's your property, then her children are your property too. And she would adopt the child as her own. And the child would be born, the one mother, the expectant mother would sit on the lap of the other mother, and she would kind of give birth. They would give birth together. So it was kind of like you were participating in this. This is your child. So Sarah comes up and says, listen, Abraham, God hasn't allowed me to become pregnant. Perhaps this is another way to do this. So she allows Abraham to go in to her handmaiden, Hagar. And of course, Abraham struggled with that a little bit. I don't wonder how long that conversation was. Probably not too long. If you insist, Hagar becomes pregnant. Now Hagar is pregnant, and Sarah becomes jealous. And it's quite probably Hagar stirring the pot a little bit. So tired being pregnant. It's so hard being pregnant. I need to keep up my strength because I'm pregnant. And she started to get under Sarah's nerves. And who does Sarah take it out on? Abraham, of course. It's all his fault. Whose idea was this? Doesn't matter. It's Abraham's fault because he said yes. And Abraham does what any red-blooded man will do. Pushes the problem onto somebody else. Blames somebody else. Hey, look, she's your servant. You do with her what you want. So Sarah begins to mistreat Hagar and abuse her. She takes out her frustrations on this young girl who was only doing what she was told to do. She had no say in the matter. Why should she have to suffer? But again, the Bible is describing the acts of sinful people. Nowhere do we find God saying, this is a good idea. I think you should do this. No. So Hagar runs away and is in the wilderness, and God sends an angel to speak to Hagar and says, look, go back. Sarah will take better care of you, but there is going to be a great nation that's going to come from your womb. So she goes back and has the child, and Abraham names the child Ishmael. Now, if you know anything about Middle Eastern politics, the Arab people see themselves as descended from Abraham through Ishmael. They believe that Ishmael is the promised son that God gave. God told Abraham that he was going to have a child of promise, and they believe that Ishmael was that child. So when we see this Middle East conflict of Arab versus Jew, this is where it comes from, all the way back. Not a good situation, and not something that God sanctioned, but God allows Ishmael to become a very powerful nation. Well, we're going to go into another story very soon, and we'll see what happens later on to this lovely family dynamic when Sarah gets pregnant. Until the next time, if you have any questions about this subject or any other subject, feel free to give me an email to methodistdave@gmail.com. Ask any questions. If you're looking for some other great online resources, I can recommend Inspiring Philosophy and Mike Winger, BibleThinker.org. Check his site out. Check out Inspiring Philosophy and Theus Brooks on TikTok. Until the next time, have a great day and be good to one another.